Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Midweek Meetings, episode number 8. I am KnockdownNico with the camera alongside Pr3ssix.
Oh, what's up?
Week 7, the NFL has wrapped up, and I'm not even gonna lie, I think there's been so much that has happened this week that I'm not even sure we can cover it all in this episode without it being like 4 hours long. So we're gonna hopefully hit some of the most key things, especially the headlines. There's like a bajillion headlines, but we're going to recap some of the games, and then we are going to go over some headlines. And there's a lot of headlines, especially injury headlines. We'll get into some big ones as that. Then we'll go into our predictions, our auto lock for the game, look at our fantasy teams for, we're rolling up on the halfway point of the fantasy year, and then finished off with our fun question. We're going to start off with the most important, well, not the most important game, but the Saquon Barkley revenge game. And Daniel Jones got benched in this, and he wasn't too happy about it.
Yeah, Saquon went off on this Giants team. I think the main story coming out of this game though is how bad that Giants offense was. Um, the defense held their own for a little bit, but when the offense wasn't generating any production, they just couldn't keep up, and ultimately this just let Saquon just run all over this Giants team. Um, Yeah, Daniel Jones getting benched. I saw he wasn't happy with it. Um, Honestly, I think it's a bad move from Dable, to be honest. I mean, Daniel Jones, he's not the greatest, but benching your starting QB, I mean, it feels like you're losing the locker room there if you're doing that. I mean, players don't know who to follow, their leader in quarterback or their leader in head coach. So I think it's an interesting situation in New York. Definitely not a situation I would want to be a part of if I was a Giants fan. So yeah, prayers prayers to the Giants fans out there.
And they were only down they were down like 28-0 or 28-7. I think it was 28-0 at the time. So, it was kind of a blowout, but it wasn't a blowout in a sense like, it's like 40. The Eagles were putting up 40 or close to 50 points. So it was kind of weird. I think Dable said they were looking for a spark in the offense, which there was none anyway. I mean, Daniel Jones just wasn't good. The offensive line was even worse. I think Daniel Jones got sacked 5 times in the first half, which is insane. There's also a stat about Daniel Jones. Now, I don't know if I'll be able to find it again, but there's probably maybe a dozen quarterbacks that have more touchdown passes since the beginning of last season in MetLife Stadium than Daniel Jones does. Daniel Jones has 0 touchdown passes in MetLife Stadium since the beginning of last season, although I think he does have one when they played Seattle last year, but that was a pick 6. So, that doesn't really count, but I don't even know. Saquon went off. I feel like it was going to happen. If it wasn't this game, it's going to be the next game. But, Saquon revenge game is spent essentially at 175 yards. And I think he should have had 3 touchdowns, but, the tush push prevailed, unfortunately. But yeah, we'll have to see what the Giants do. They didn't look good. I think that offensive line was the real reason, though, why they couldn't get anything going with just no time for the quarterback to even go through his reads or anything. Now I combine these two, but we're down to only one undefeated team. The Vikings lose and the Chiefs win.
Yeah, I was expecting the Vikings loss. I predicted Detroit in our pick'ems last week. So I was kind of expecting this. I knew the Vikings weren't going to stay undefeated for that long. I feel like they're really not that elite of a team in my opinion. Their offense runs through Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones, and their defense is kind of their upside on this team. But as we can see, against the Lions, their defense really couldn't get it done. Even if you look back to the second half of that Packers game in Week 4, I believe they couldn't really get it done either. So um, I think this defense against really good offenses is really just middle of the pack. They're not a Super Bowl contender, in my opinion. I do see them as a playoff team, but not a Super Bowl contender. Chiefs, I don't know how they keep winning. Mahomes is not playing good. The offense seemed to run through Kareem Hunt last week, which is kind of crazy to think about that he wasn't even on this team to start the year. But I think what's keeping them in these games is their defense. Their defense has been good this year. Spagnola is probably coach of the year, in my opinion, or coordinator of the year. Um, his defense is really getting it done. I like his defense the best out of any defense in the league. And yeah, that's why the Chiefs are so competitive. And I mean, Mahomes, he's not having a great year, but when they need a play, he'll go and get that play for them. So yeah, the Chiefs are still definitely Super Bowl contenders. Vikings, not so much, in my opinion.
The Lions only won that game by 2 off pretty much a game-winning field goal. It wasn't game-winning, but there was 15 seconds left when it was kicked. But there's been some rumors. I saw a couple rumors swirling around that potentially the Vikings were interested in trading for Matthew Stafford. If that does go through, that could be an element that potentially, it's hit or miss though. I feel like Matthew Stafford's good at times. Matthew Stafford is not good at times. So maybe this improves this offense, but I think they're capable of keeping up with teams. They did score pretty much almost 30 points, but it just comes down to the turnovers. Sam Darnold had an interception that game against the Lions, and you could say that was pretty much the outcome of this game in a sense. I'm going to see where that interception. Oh, and they did also have a fumble touchdown. Oh wait, no, that was the Vikings. My bad. But that interception, they threw an interception and then the Lions scored a touchdown on that next drive. So you could say the turnover is what lost in that game. So I don't think they're Super Bowl contenders, but they can make a deep playoff run. I see. They're going to rely heavy on that, scoring a lot of points, especially if the defense can't hold teams down. So we'll just have to see, but I still expect them to be contending at least for a high wild card spot. Now for the Chiefs, they don't look like they should be this good, but they are. And I think part of that has to do with just they're playing teams and they're capitalizing maybe outside of the first 2 games. They're either not so good of a team or they're just capitalizing on other teams' misfortune, like the San Francisco game. San Francisco is without pretty much their whole offensive weaponry. So they were playing with a bunch of backups. But Mahomes keeps doing his thing. There's going to be some question about that fake little out of bounds juke potentially, which there seems to be a lot of controversy about. But like you said, the defense is carrying this team, or not carrying, but is a big reason why they're in these games or winning these games. Although they did just put corner Jalen Watson on injured reserve with a lower leg injury, so that may take a bit of a hit. I think he was drafted in the 2022 draft, so I think they're replacing him with someone else that got drafted in that same draft. So we'll have to see who can step up, for the corner for them. But they don't need a win, or they don't need to play good to win. They just need to play good enough to win, or just mediocre, especially with their schedule coming up. They play Denver. Their next 3 of their next 4 games are against Denver, Carolina, and Las Vegas. So Like the only game that they may have a little trouble with is Buffalo, especially with Amari Cooper now there. So, there's a potential. Oh, and they played Tampa Bay, but Tampa Bay is pretty hurt as well. So, yeah, it's just not like they can win over the next 5 games. Kansas City could probably win 4 of those, or if not all 5. So it'll be a really weird team if they go undefeated. I don't think they will, but it's the Chiefs. I mean, who the heck knows? Our next one, and it's a same game, but we're going to combine it as well. Russell Wilson, Steelers debut. He looked really good. Not the Russell Wilson we saw in Denver. And Devontae Adams, Jets debut. I think Devontae Adams, if I'm not mistaken, is the first person as well in the history of the NFL to lose to the same team in back-to-back weeks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting stat because he didn't really play, but Steelers Wilson, he looks good, man. I think the scheme for him in Pittsburgh is a lot better than what he was working with in Denver. Um, I think Tomlin definitely made the right move in putting Wilson back in as starting QB. The passing offense looks so much better. I'm not gonna lie. Fields is fun to watch. But I mean, Wilson is a better passer than Fields. It's just how it is. So I think the Steelers are a way better team with Russ at the helm. Devontae, that was an interesting game. He wasn't that impactful, but he definitely spread the field out, I think, for the Jets. We kind of saw it. They weren't really shadowing Garrett Wilson or Devontae Adams. They kind of just had to man up one of them, and then the other one had free reign over the whole side of the field. So against worse QBs, so it's gonna be hard to guard this Jets offense. I feel like having 2 wide receiver ones really, in my opinion, and then having Alan Lazard too on the outside is just really hard. Alan Lazard's having himself a year this year, so this Jets offense is good, but the debut from Devontae Adams kind of disappointing overall. Not much production, especially in the second half. I don't think he had a target in the second half actually. And yeah, we'll see how this Jets team just figures it out because their defense did not look great. I know they had some injuries, but their defense did not look great against Pittsburgh. So I don't know. They're trying to go all in, but they're currently 2-5. So how is a 2-5 team gonna go make the playoffs? We'll see. We'll see if they can turn it around, but it'll be interesting to see how this Adams experiment turns out in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna start with the Jets on this one. First off, yeah, I don't think he had a single target that second half or a catch. Devontae Adams had 3 catches for 30 yards. Brees Hall led the team in receptions and saw the same amount of targets as Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams as well. They all saw 9 targets. I think we're going to get into a stretch. I'm going to throw out a couple facts. First off, this time last year, the Jets had a better record with Zach Wilson. I think they were 4-3 or 3-4. One of those 2 records. I think they were 3-4. And Aaron Rodgers has the same amount of interceptions as Zach Wilson did either at the same time last year or the entire season. I don't remember which one. I think it was at the same time. So I think, in a couple of games, right, we look at their schedule. I think they play the Patriots this week. So, I mean, that doesn't do any justice. They'll probably win that game. But then they play Houston, Arizona, Indianapolis, Seattle, Miami, probably with Tua. So, I mean, the rest of their schedule, they definitely have some winnable games. The question is, though, can they, complete what they're going to do, essentially? Because it's not looking good for them. It's not looking good for them. And it kind of makes you question, and I think we'll see, by maybe the bye week for them, which is week 12, was it actually Robert Saleh's fault, essentially? Or is it something bigger? Maybe Aaron Rodgers, maybe not Aaron Rodgers. Maybe Nathaniel Hackett. I don't even know if he's still on with them or not. Maybe not him. Or is it something higher up in the Jets organization that is the issue on why they can't win, essentially? I think these next 4 weeks before they go into the bye week are going to be critical. I feel like they should win 3 of these. They play New England, Arizona, and Indianapolis. I feel like those are all winnable games. Houston, I don't know. I feel like that may be 50-50 depending on how the defense plays. They locked CJ Stroud up last year, but we'll see. On the Steelers side, though, I think, look, Justin Fields was good. I like Justin Fields, but we did not see the Russell Wilson in Denver. We saw the Russell Wilson in Seattle 2 nights ago. And like, if Russell Wilson, even if he's not prime Russell Wilson, if he can play like how he played last game, or even, somewhat not even mediocre. I mean, he threw for 264 yards and 2 touchdowns. The big key, though, that helps this offense is his deep ball threat. With Justin Fields, they weren't really throwing the deep ball too much. And if they were, most of the time it was going incomplete. I mean, you saw it a couple times, him throwing it to George Pickens, kind of these moon ball, jump balls. George Pickens came down with a couple of them. So I think this is really going to help this team, especially if they can run the ball. I mean, Najee Harris had over 100 yards on the ground last game. Jaylen Warren had 44. So if they can have the run, and then almost like Seattle, how he played in Seattle, if he can get the run going, and then you do these play action deep bombs, like, this offense is going to be scary. I still wish they kind of had, not Calvin Austin or Van Jefferson being their second and third wide receivers, but maybe a trade will happen. So we'll just have to see. But the Steelers, especially with their defense, 100% contenders. I don't know if they're going to win the division, but it's going to be really close. The last game we're going to recap is Amari Cooper's debut. I mean, they played the Titans, but he still had I think it was an okay debut.
Yeah, I don't think there's many takeaways from this game other than Amari Cooper was a good signing. He spread the field and he ultimately allowed Keon Coleman to get more involved. Keon Coleman went for over 100 yards. So with Amari Cooper as a threat now, teams have to put their best cornerback on him. And so it's kind of like what Adams is doing in New York. Teams are now in a dilemma where they got to kind of leave guys like Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir less attention with Amari Cooper on that team now. So definitely a good move for the Bills. I think it'll help their offense in the long run. They got to kind of get their run game going again. I know they play the Titans, who have a pretty good run defense overall, but their run game was not very good against them. So if they're able to complement the run game with the pass game, I think they'll be just fine, and I look at them as a Super Bowl contender if they're able to get that offense moving like that.
Yeah, they only had 74 yards on the ground, and Ray Davis had the most, only on 5 carries though. But yeah, I mean, if you look at it, Amari Cooper didn't even have the most targets in this game. He had the 4th most targets on the team that game. Keon Coleman, Shakir had 7, and then Dalton Kincaid had 6. But I was watching something looking at something on Twitter, and I don't remember what account it was, but they brought up a really good point. It seems like Keon Coleman, especially now, right? He wasn't getting good separation on the boundaries and stuff. So it seems like, at least currently his style is more playing in the slot and slot or just these deep shots, like jump balls. And Amari Cooper opened that up. We saw that game. I mean, he had 4 receptions for 125 yards, over 30 yards a catch on average. And that's because of Amari Cooper. So you have Amari Cooper, and then you have Khalil Shakir, who is still being very productive, pretty much. I think he only has one target where he hasn't caught a ball essentially still this year, which is insane. So you have those two on the edge, and then you have Keon Coleman in the slot and Curtis Samuel, who I think is dealing with an injury, so I'm not even sure he'll play. But I think, if anything, obviously it's going to help the passing game because it's Amari Cooper, but it's going to open up, like you said, it's going to open up Khalil Shakir. It's going to open up Keon Coleman to getting open a lot more, and I think that's going to help the Bills. I mean, we know Josh Allen has the arm to throw these deep balls and everything, and it's going to just help that Bills offense, especially if they get the run. You can do a lot more play action, and don't forget, you still have Dalton Kincaid, so you put those 3 wide receivers on the field, and then you have Kincaid as well. Like, that's a good offense. It's a scary offense. And one other thing to throw in there, Josh Allen has yet to throw an interception this season, and he's first in QBR. So Josh Allen, he's not turning the football over, at least through the air. So, and you have Amari Cooper now, who you could probably say is more reliable of a catcher than whoever else would have been there. So as long as he doesn't sail some footballs and stuff, like, the Bills are looking pretty set. They're looking easily. They're gonna win this division. They'll probably lock it up by, I don't even know. I'm not gonna say. They may even lock it up by like week 14 or something, this division, depending on how it goes, because they're 5-2 right now, and I'm not even sure who's next best. It may be the Jets, low key.
I think it's the Dolphins.
Is the Dolphins at
I'm not
3-4 then?
Let me check.
Look. I'm
Yes,
sorry, the
the
Dolphins
Dolphins.
at 2-4.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Bills don't have a bye week till I think it was week 12. But I mean, they have essentially like a 3-game lead, and the tiebreakers and stuff as well would need to happen as well. So yeah, the Bills are looking good. Are they going to be first in the AFC? I'm not sure. They may not even be second. You got Kansas City and Baltimore is looking really good as well. Those are the games that we're gonna recap for this or last week. Now we're gonna go on to the headlines. We have about 1 billion injuries. Like, there were so many injuries this season. The title of this over on YouTube may just be the injury bug, because I mean, so many people got hurt. We're gonna, short and sweet, give like a minute opinion on some of these, because we got some pretty significant players as well. We're going to start out with, though, the Browns QBs, Deshaun Watson, Achilles, out for the season. And then the backup, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, with I think it was a thumb injury or a hand injury. He's going to be out for a couple weeks as well. And they did sign, which we'll get to in a little bit, but they did sign Bailey Zappi to back up Jameis Winston, who's going to be starting now.
Yeah, that's a good opportunity for Jameis. I'm excited to see what he does. Obviously, you never want your quarterback 1 and quarterback 2 to get injured, but some Browns fans might look at it as a new opportunity for this team to go and make some moves and get a win or two this season. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what this Browns team can do. I guess is not much. Their wide receiver 1 was Cedric Tillman last week, which is just nasty to think about. No offense to him, but Njoku's going to be a big part of this offense. Nick Chubb is coming back, but he's on a snap count, so we'll see how that plays out. Their defense, I mean, maybe their defense gets unlocked because of this QB change. Their offense have been slow all year, and kind of led to the defense not being able to get anything done. So maybe with the defense, it just shows up, and this team might be able to put together some games this season and maybe become a 4 or 5 win team here down the stretch. So we'll see how this plays out. Yeah.
I mean, Deshaun Watson wasn't playing good anyway, except, this game he was 15 of 17 before getting injured. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of a little surprised when I heard that, Jameis Winston was like the emergency QB3 essentially. Dorian Thompson Robinson, I guess they want him to get snaps, maybe trade him, try to get a draft pick or whatever. But I mean, he in this game he was 11 for 4 with 2 interceptions, only 82 yards. Jameis may give this team some hope, like you said. His one drive or however many drives he played, he was 5 for 11 for 67 yards and a touchdown. So, you know, maybe there's something to that. I think David Njoku is going to get a lot more attention as well. He had 14 targets. Cedric Tillman had 12 targets as well. So, yeah, I mean, maybe Jameis will give some life. I'm not expecting anything crazy out of Jameis. It's probably going to go maybe even touchdown interception ratio, but the Browns are in a tough spot, and maybe they go ahead, win a couple of games, like you said. I think it's doable. Maybe it helps out the defense as well, because I don't think the defense is that bad. The offense was so bad, the defense never got a chance to rest, and that's why teams would score so many points on them and everything, and it wasn't really the defense's fault. So we'll see how this goes. Obviously, that sucks that both quarterbacks for the Browns, their top two quarterbacks, are out. I'm not sure how long Dorian Thompson Robinson is out for. I think what I saw was a couple of weeks. Actually, now I don't even know. This is saying that the Browns don't believe he'll miss multiple weeks. So maybe it's just this week. So, maybe he starts next week, depending on how Jameis plays. I think we'll just have to wait and see, how all that works out. Next injury is Aiden O'Connell, broken thumb.
Yeah, this one, Raiders aren't really a threat this year, so it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, it sucks for him. He just got that starting job over Minshew. He wasn't playing all that great, but to be a starter in the NFL, you have to be good. So yeah, Aiden O'Connell sucks for him. The signing of Desmond Ritter is kind of interesting here. I guess he's gonna be. I don't know. Is he QB1? I'm assuming so. Who else do
I
they
do
even
not
have?
know. I did have that on my notes as well, which you can get to later.
Anyways, the Raiders' offense is just gonna be bad this year. I think we have to face it as it is. They're gonna be a 3-win team this year. I'm just gonna come out and say it. They're not winning much anymore. Their season's kind of cooked.
Yeah, I mean they just put Aiden O'Connell on injured reserve. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. I think he's getting surgery on it as well. I'm not sure. Yeah, it hasn't been revealed if it'll require surgery or not, but at least 4 to 6 weeks. They did sign Desmond Ritter, which we will actually get to later on in our headlines as well. I think Minshew's going to start, but I mean, yeah, this team offensively is not good. This game against the Rams, they were surprisingly competitive. I don't know how. This is going to be like, I think Brock Bowers' stats as a rookie are going to be so overinflated because of how bad this team is. And especially when this team doesn't have Jacoby Myers on the field as well. I think that's going to inflate his targets, his catching, and his receiving yards even more than they already are. So, yeah, I mean, this team overall isn't good. They're probably looking for a good draft pick. There's so many holes on this team, though. I guess what position do you go? Do you go quarterback? Do you go running back? Do you go wide receiver? Maybe something on the defensive side. There's just so many holes on this team. And who knows? They may be bad, but they may not even be bad enough to get a top 5 pick, which would be very bad for Raiders fans. Brandon Ayuk, torn ACL and MCL. He's out for the year. I'm going to throw in this as well. Deebo Samuel went to the hospital for pneumonia, so he didn't even play. He played 4 snaps last week.
Yeah, I saw Devo's now out of the hospital, so I think he's getting healthier. We'll see if he plays this week. My guess is he will. But yeah, the Ayuk situation, that sucks for him. He just got that bag. but he really hadn't been playing well all year. It's kind of a weird year for Ayuk. He gets that deal. He doesn't really show up at all. I think he had one good week so far into the season, and then he goes out with this injury. I mean, you just hate to see it, man. And for the 49ers, this is a big blow for their receiving core. Um, Ayuk out, Christian McCaffrey's probably out for the rest of the season. And then you got Debo. I mean, I don't know what's going on with him, to be honest. We know he has pneumonia, but he really hasn't been that big of a factor this season either. So Niners are in a weird spot where they don't have all these weapons to rely on every game, and it's kind of weird to see um how this season plays out for them.
Yeah, I mean it's a big loss for Brandon Ayuk, the Niners not having him. I mean, like you said, he wasn't really doing too much, but just having him on the field as well was a big factor. And then, so yeah, that's a big loss for them. You know, it's obviously season ending. We'll have to see when he comes back as well for next year, because that's going to be a big injury to come back from as well. It's just unfortunate. I mean, the Niners have just been completely beat up with injuries. You know, this Debo situation as well. They did say he's out of the hospital now from this article at like 6:30 Eastern. Um, they're not sure if he's going to play next week against the Cowboys. They don't practice until tomorrow. So I guess we'll just wait and see. But I'll go over this in my prediction as well. But if he doesn't play, they're going to be without Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Jawan Jennings may not play. If Debo doesn't play, they'll be without him. And then George Kittle is questionable, I think, as well. So the Niners are really banged up on offense. So, yeah, you know, the Brock Purdy stat of which he turned the ball over, but Brock Purdy has never lost a game when he has 0 turnovers. That streak may come to an end this like season. There's also been some rumors that Nick Bosa potentially could get traded to an NFC East, or not an East, but an NFC contending team. I've seen some rumors on that. You know, we're in this. I feel like the Niners are in this weird situation as well. Are they, you know, contending even for a playoff spot, or are they kind of just chalking this year up as a, you know, as a wash and willing to, I guess, make some trades to get some draft picks? All right, next injury. This one should be pretty short. DK Metcalf, I think it was a sprained MCL. I think he's week to week, so not as bad as I think people thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that was kind of a scary injury to see him get carted off, but it sounds like it's not that bad. Minor sprain in the MCL, I think that's what they said or something. So hopefully we see him back. Probably not this week, I'd assume, but maybe next week. So we're looking at a week 9 return for Metcalf. So yeah, hopefully he gets back and he's healthy.
Yeah, I'm not sure he plays this week. I definitely think people thought it was going to be a lot worse than it was, especially with the cart coming out, because you never know how bad it's going to be. But yeah, this team should be in good hands anyway. They have JSN, they have Lockett, you know, Jake Bobo as well has been pretty solid, and the tight ends are a lot more active in the passing game this year than they were last year. So, you know, even if DK is out for a week, I don't think this really disrupts Geno and, you know, that passing offense especially. So, you know, good for Metcalf. Like, it could have been definitely a way worse injury. So the fact that it's a week to week injury is honestly good. Jane Daniels ribs, I think he is week to week as well, which is kind of a blow to the Commanders. Although Mariota did play good, but it was against the Panthers.
Yeah, this Commanders team, um, I think they can win with Mariota under the helm if Daniels has to sit out a week or two with that rib injury. Um, Mariota looked okay, like you said, he was playing the Panthers, but he has a lot of support around him. I feel like he's got 3 really good running backs in that Commanders backfield, between Robinson, McNichols, and Eckler. And then you also have Terry McLaurin and De'Ami Brown. in that wide receiver room. So, I mean, their offense is looking good. And their defense has played well as of recent, so that's kind of an interesting development. This Washington defense was thought to be one of the worst in the NFL, but they've kind of turned it around. And I think they're competitive in any game this season. So even without Daniels, so it'll be interesting. I think they can definitely win games without Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, I still like to see more from their defense. I mean, their last 4 games, they played the Cardinals, the Browns, the Ravens, which they gave up 30 points to, and the Panthers. If you combine those three, the Panthers, the Browns, and the Cardinals, they've given up 34 points and they gave up 30 to the Ravens. So kind of iffy on the defense. But Jane Daniels, I mean, it says he's week to week. They'll assess in practice to see if he can play this week. But yeah, I mean, he was playing good. He was playing really good. That meme video came out about him, not protecting himself, which I think, I mean, that type of run where he was, like, I don't know if he can slide in that situation, but I think he does need to, almost like Anthony Richardson, I think he needs to learn how to slide so he doesn't get injured or he prevents himself from getting more injuries in the future. Because while he is athletic, he is explosive. He is not the biggest quarterback, so actually he's 6'4", 210. Never mind, he's like Josh Allen. But what I was saying was he needs to learn how to slide. He needs to learn how to take care of himself so something like this doesn't happen again. But yeah, the fact that it was only week to week, and the rib injuries can be scary. Like Tyrod Taylor, pretty sure 1 year he punctured his lung or something, or had a collapsed lung. So as long as it's something that isn't like that, or fractured ribs, that could take a while to heal as well. So maybe it's just something with the rib tissues in between the ribs or whatever. So yeah, hopefully he just comes back. And he should hopefully, be back to himself. Hopefully this doesn't derail how he's been playing this season. All right, we're going to throw these in together because they're both Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. Chris Godwin, dislocated ankle. So he's done for the season. And then Mike Evans, hamstring. I've heard that he's not going to be available till after the bye week, which is week 11.
Yeah, those are two huge blows for Tampa Bay. I think there's a lot of controversy around these injuries too. I heard that Mike Evans was spotted limping before that play developed where he re-injured that hamstring, which he came into the week knowing that he had that hamstring issue. So people are questioning whether they made the right call there. And then, I mean, the Bucks were down 10 with less than a minute to go. They were not going to win that game, and they kept their starters in and were trying to push the ball downfield. And a lot of people are upset with that because it ultimately led to the Godwin injury. So there's a lot of controversy around these injuries. I really don't think the Godwin one is that big of a deal. They were just trying to go win the game. The Evans one's kind of weird, I feel like. I feel like a player's limping shouldn't be put in the game. But either way, this is a big blow for the Bucks. Those are their two main playmakers on offense. Baker's wide receiver one now. I mean, I guess it's McMillan. They also got Sterling Shepard too. So that wide receiver core went from being one of the best, in my opinion, to one of the worst. So I don't know. And their rush offense hasn't been good either all year. So this Bucks team looks kind of depleted. Um, and I think these injuries don't make them a playoff contender anymore. I think they're going to slip in this division very fast, and I think this game against Atlanta this week will be a big tell on to who the real winner of this division will be. And personally, I don't think it's going to be the Bucks.
Yeah, I don't think the Bucks are going to drop that far in this division because you have the Saints, who I don't even know how much longer Derek Carr is out for, and then you have the Panthers, who, I mean, unless the Panthers somehow win 2 more games, which they could, but I highly doubt it. I don't see it. They may not make the playoffs. And if you look at their depth chart, I mean, Mike Evans is out. Chris Godwin is out. Raheem Jarrett is on IR. Cameron Johnson is on IR. So they're going to have to either trade for someone or, sign someone off of free agency. Because right now you have wide receiver 1, Sterling Shepard. Then you have Jalen McMillan, who's a rookie. Trey Palmer. And Cade Otton, who, may see a lot more targets. He had 8 receptions for 100 yards last night, I think. So, maybe he gets more in the action. I feel like they're going to use their running backs a lot more, in the passing game as well, even though they do use them a lot anyway. So, who knows? Maybe Rashard White becomes a wide receiver. But, yeah, I mean, I know the controversy behind the Chris Godwin injury as well. I think I saw what Baker says, right? You score, you get an onside kick. I mean, very slim chance you get the onside kick, but you potentially get the onside kick. And then I think they were down by 10 at this point. And then you have a potential to either get a tying field goal or a Hail Mary to win it. So I don't know. Like this game seemed dominant by the Ravens, but the Bucs kept scoring, which made it interesting. The Mike Evans injury, I mean, he got injured on that touchdown catch he got. And then I wasn't really paying attention, I'm not going to lie, till, I saw he got injured again. So I don't really know what happened in between them, how many plays he played in between that. So, yeah, I mean, this is tough. I mean, Chris Godwin is a free agent at the end of this year as well. So that was bad. And if you look at the stats, I have to go find them, but the stats were ridiculous. He was like first in yards after the catch, first in touchdowns. You're close to top 2 in touchdowns. Like he was having a really, really good year, and to lose both of them in the same game in the same season, it's going to be a rough go for the Bucs. But we'll have to see what route they go. Do they trade for someone, or do they go ahead, sign someone, or are they just going to rock with who they have? Also, I did see that the league is reviewing that tackle by Roquan Smith to determine whether it was a hip drop tackle or not. So we'll see if there's any fines from that or anything. But yeah, I mean, that was a really bad injury for Chris Godwin. So yeah, hopefully he's able to get healthy for next season. I'll be curious to see if he decides to stay with the Bucs or, if he'll go to another team. All right, those are the injuries we're going to cover. Like I said, there's literally a billion of them that happened this week. So, you can probably find them on ESPN if you're looking for more in depth on stuff, or, any other sports, website. But now we're going to move on to Jameson Williams, 2-game suspension, or he's going to get a 2-game suspension for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing substances. I'm not sure when his suspension starts, if it's this week or if it's going to be later on in the season.
Yeah, this dude can't get out of his own way. First he gets banned for gambling, then he gets this suspension. Like, bro, come on, man. You're given a shot at the NFL, and this is what you're going to do with it? I mean, this is just stupidity, bro. Like, why? There's no point. And you had 1 catch for -4 yards, brother. Like, why are you using performing enhancement drugs, dude? You're not that guy. But Jamo's kind of been that deep threat for the Lions. Without him, I don't think it'll be that big of a blow for the Lions, to be honest. It's more of a blow for Jamo's career, in my opinion. He's got a bad track record, so any team looking to take a risk on him may be less inclined to. So, yeah, not much impact from that, to be honest. Just no JMO for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't know when that suspension starts. I don't think they announced when it starts yet. There's just, been sources saying that he's probably going to get a 2-game suspension. But even if they lose him, I don't think it's that big of a deal. like you said, you just moved Khalif Raymond to his spot. Tim Patrick has been playing solid. Obviously, Amonra is wide receiver number one, and I guess if you really need to, you can throw Allen Robinson in there. So it's all good in the neighborhood for the Detroit Lions. It's just, you know, Jameson Williams, like you said, he's getting in his own way. You know, if he's a free agent or whenever he becomes a free agent, and if the Lions decide not to re-sign him, it's just going to be what team decides to take a risk on him, knowing, you have that gambling situation, and now you have this. Is there potentially does this again in the future and he gets suspended for more time or, something like that. So if anything, it's just like you said, he's just ruining his own career, but, not in a sense that it's like you're completely kicked out of the NFL as of right now. All right, we have Tua is back to practice, potential week 8 start. Also, he also said he was not going to use the Guardian cap, which I don't know if that's going to really make a difference too much, but
Yeah, it'll be fun to see Tua back. Hopefully he starts week 8. I think the Dolphins need him to start week 8. The Dolphins, I mean, we've seen how lackluster their offense has been without Tua, and they need him. I think he's that spark that kind of runs this whole offense. I mean, Waddle, Achane, Tyreek Hill, none of them have had any production since Tua's been out. So they need Tua back. But obviously, with Tua's concussion history, they got to be smart about this, right? I mean, Tua said he's not playing with the Guardian cap. I don't think any QBs in the league play with the Guardian cap, so that's not really surprising to me. But they got to manage him well. They got to protect him. I mean, they can't risk him getting another concussion, especially this season. Um, I mean, eventually, I think if he does get another concussion, I mean, I feel like they have to look somewhere else for QB. I mean, that many concussions is it's not good for a person. And so for Tua and for this team, I think this team has to protect him and they have to find a way to keep him protected in the pocket and so this offense can run smoothly. And I'm looking forward to seeing him start this week. So it'll be fun to watch the Dolphins this week.
yeah, I mean, especially with his history, you cannot rush him back from this, especially this type of an injury as well. So, even if they're on the fence, like even if he doesn't start this week, like I feel like as a precautionary, I feel like that's better and best for him and best for his career. But he's eyeing the week 8 start. Whatever week he does start, whether it's week 8 or week 9, it's going to spark this Dolphins offense. Obviously, like you said, the Dolphins have not been good since he's, been injured. The offense has not been good. Tyreek Hill has not been good. Waddle hasn't been good. Achane has been okay at times. But especially that passing offense is going to get a huge, huge spark. And, I think that's what they need, right? They're known for that. And, Tua gets a lot of hate, but you look at this team, they're so dysfunctional without him. It's like he is a legit NFL quarterback and, he deserves to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. So, we'll see how that goes. Whether he plays this week or when he plays next week. Whenever he plays, though, expect this Dolphins offense to be at or close to where they are going to be, where they're going to be at, where they have been at in the past. So this should be exciting. And hopefully, outside of the game where he got injured, obviously, they have only scored 17 points. That's the most they've scored this entire season. And with him being out, the most they've scored is 12. So, expect this to be, especially if he plays this week against the Cardinals, especially just expect this game to, this offense to spark and just put up a lot of points. One thing I want to mention about the Guardian caps, one of the Bucks linemen had it this season, or in that Thursday night game or Monday night game. And I don't know if it's just the Bucks colors or what it was, but that thing looked so bad. Like the coloring on it, the cap just looked so bad. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did. I think you
I
could
th-
definitely tell there was a guardian cat there.
yeah, I think it's just the Bucks color though, because it's like this like dark bronze, and it just like didn't wasn't really the right cover. Like the Steelers one, right? Because it's like a black helmet essentially. It, like you can notice it, but it's not like you know like oh this looks weird in a sense like the coloring, but the coloring on that Bucks one it just looked completely off. So I don't know. All right, we're gonna move on. We touched on these a little bit, with some of these injuries, but we're gonna combine them. Saints signed Desmond Ritter. I'm sorry, the Raiders signed Desmond Ritter. The Saints signed Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and the Browns signed Bailey Zappi.
Yeah, these aren't league-changing signings here. All of them kind of make sense. The injuries at QB for the Raiders, makes sense for Desmond Ritter to sign there. Shaheed going down for the year for the Saints and Olave battling with an injury, makes sense for this MVS signing. MVS has got to replace this Shaheed role. That's kind of the role MVS has played throughout his career. He's kind of that deep threat guy. So I think the Saints will use him in the same way they were using Shaheed. Browns signing Bailey Zappi. Like you said, this is the backup Jameis, while the other two QBs are injured. So yeah, no league changing signs here, but definitely there are definitely some moves. I'll say that. um, yeah, nothing crazy.
Yeah, I think these are just depth moves, almost like you're saying. Ritter should just back up a quarterback because they lost a quarterback. MVS is, I mean, he has experience, so it'll be someone who I guess can help the less experienced Saints wide receivers. But when they get Olave back, I'm gonna assume he's gonna be, maybe starting opposite of Olave. I don't know, but that won't be super bad then. But it's just a depth piece add. Same thing with Zappi. Especially with Dorian Thompson Robinson being out for a couple weeks out, or at least a week or two. And I guess they're worried, maybe another quarterback gets injured, so they want to have three quarterbacks on hand, the Browns. So nothing, to set the world on fire, but just, some depth for some teams that have been injury bugged. One thing I'm going to add here, because it broke not too long before we started this. Andy Dalton involved in a car accident. This small ESPN article says 7 miles from the Bank of America Stadium. Nobody in the vehicle was transported by emergency personnel to the hospital, but Dalton is being evaluated by the team medical personnel.
Yeah, that sucks for Andy Dalton, man. He gets a starting opportunity in Carolina, and then that happens. Hey, that's just unfortunate. I don't know how big of a deal this is for him, but even if it sidelines him a week and Bryce Young goes off, he's probably not getting that starting job back. So yeah, it's just only the this could only happen to the Panthers. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Hopefully he's doing all right. Hopefully his family's doing all right. But like you said, even if he doesn't play, I don't think it matters. I mean, they're playing the Broncos, who have a good defense, and we saw what the Broncos did to the Saints, who had a rookie quarterback or a less experienced quarterback with not so good wide receivers. It's probably going to be the same thing, even if he starts or even if Bryce Young starts. And I mean, Dalton's only gone 1-4 since replacing Bryce Young, so it's not like maybe the offense is a little better, but it's not like he's winning a bunch of ball games or anything. So Panthers are gonna Panthers. It seems like it's a Panthers thing that would happen, kind of like how the most random stuff happens to the New York Giants. But yeah, it's unfortunate. We'll see what happens. Obviously, they said nothing else has been disclosed yet, so I'm gonna assume he plays. Obviously, we don't know the severity of the accident, but I'm just gonna go ahead and guess that he does play this week. Those are the headlines for this week. I mean, there were mostly injuries. There were like a ton of injuries, but some other headlines in there. There's been some trade rumors as well, which I'm going to guess if there's trades are either going to drop later in this week, which we will cover then next week, or they'll happen next week. So there's been some spicy trade rumors, though, I will say that. We're going to move on to our predictions, though, for week number 8. As I load this up, I think I went 11-4 this week, so I didn't do too bad.
I think I went, let's check. I went 13-2, so pretty solid week out of me here. I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I kind of got screwed by that Chad Ryland actually making a field goal in that game because I did have the Chargers winning that game. But yeah, I think we've both been cooking these last couple of weeks. The last 2-3 weeks, because we were both at about even now. We're probably a solid 15 games. You're probably a little higher than that, over 500% on the year. So we're going to move on to the week 8 predictions. Thursday night football, Minnesota at the Los Angeles Rams, and it'll probably be a home game for Minnesota anyway.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the Minnesota Vikings here. Although, listen, I'm putting the Minnesota Vikings on upset alert, but I'm still gonna take the Vikings. Cup's coming back this week, so you never know. Stafford and Cup might have that magical connection with Kyrie in there too. But that being said, the Vikings have been a good team. Aaron Jones was back last week, looked good. This run, I mean, really, it comes down to the Rams defense, who's not very good, and this Vikings offense has been pretty good. Jefferson's gonna outmatch that whole entire team, and then just add on Addison as well. I'm not sure what Hawkinson's timeline is, but probably not this week we see him, maybe next week. But yeah, just a good overall offense for the Vikings and a not so good defense for the Rams. So that's why I'm taking the Minnesota Vikings.
I'm taking the Vikings. Cup I think, is confirmed he's playing this week or Thursday. There's also been some rumors that he potentially could get traded as well. If he does, I don't know if that'll be this week, but I still think Minnesota is going to win this game. I mean, they're just the better overall team. Outside of the Rams' defensive line, they've been struggling. And, as long as Sam Darnold doesn't, turn the football over a bunch, this game should be pretty winnable for the Vikings. I think there's a chance Hawkinson comes back this week, although it is a Thursday night game, so I do not know. So this says as of 1 day ago he was limited in practice, so maybe he returns this week. If not, he'll probably return next week. But look, I mean, while Joey Munt and the rest of the tight ends haven't set the world on fire, they've been solid doing their part. But I just don't think this Rams defense, especially their secondary, is going to be able to keep up with the passing attack of the Minnesota Vikings. So I'm taking the Vikings. Up next, we have Baltimore at Cleveland.
Look, I'm taking the Baltimore Ravens. This should be a dominant game from the Ravens. Although it is an AFC North matchup, it seems like AFC North always has some wacky thing going on. But I still like the Ravens here. They've been on fire recently. I think they'll be able to run over the Browns, honestly. The Browns, like we said, their defense hasn't been great this year, and they're not going to be able to stop Lamar and Derrick Henry. I'm just going to put it that way. So, yeah, I'm taking the Baltimore Ravens here. Not much of a competition in this game, in my opinion.
I'm taking the Ravens. I mean, you pretty much said it all. This could be a little close because it's an AFC North matchup, but I mean the Ravens are are probably looking, maybe not their defense because their defense sometimes gives up a lot of points, but they're probably overall looking like the best or one of the best teams in the NFL as of right now, and it's going to continue. Lamar's going to have a good day. Derrick Henry's going to have an absolute mammoth day probably. So he'll probably break off a big run, honestly, even if he's struggling. Probably break off like a 60-yard run and then go from like 20 yards to 80 yards in like, 5 seconds. I don't think this is too much of a competition, though. The Browns are beat up. They don't have the offensive weapons. So I'm taking Baltimore. Up next, we have Tennessee at Detroit.
Look, 99% of the fans are taking the Detroit Lions, and I am also going to take the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are probably the best team in the NFC right now, and this Titans team is not going to compete at all. Titans might be able to stop the run game, but they're not going to be able to stop the pass game, and their offense is not going to be able to get anything going. So, yeah, they don't really stand a chance. This is the Detroit Lions, 100%.
I'm taking Detroit as well. I mean, yeah, there's nothing too much to say. Will Levis questionable, even if he does return. Maybe Mason Rudolph starts. DeAndre Hopkins is questionable. I think Tajay Spears is returning as well. But this team, while the defense is solid, Detroit may not put up a ton of passing yards, but if they don't put up a ton of passing yards, this run game is just going to run the two-headed monster. I think Montgomery is going to play, and then Jahmyr Gibbs. They're going to take care of this Detroit team. Their defense is good. Whoever's at quarterback is going to make a couple turnovers on Tennessee. So, yeah, this is Detroit all the way. Up next, we have Arizona at Miami.
Look, this is a big game for Arizona because if they win this game, they're at 4-4, and I think they're probably gonna end at either second in this division or, depending on what the Seahawks do, could end up in, I don't know what the tiebreaker is, but they could be tied for first. So this is a big game for the Cardinals. That being said, I'm taking the Dolphins. I think if Tua comes back, this Dolphins team will be able to handle the Cardinals easily. Um, we saw what the Chargers were able to do. Herbert had 300 passing yards against this Cardinals secondary, and Tyreek Hill will run all over this Cardinals team if Tua is back. And so, with on if Tua's playing, this is a Dolphins win. So that's what I'm gonna assume it's gonna be. If something changes and Tua doesn't play, I'm taking the Cardinals. But for right now, I'm taking Tua and the Dolphins. They should win this game against this depleted Cardinals defense.
I'm taking the Dolphins. You said it, but I'm going on record and saying as well. I'm banking on Tua playing. If Tua doesn't play, I'm going to switch this to the Cardinals. But I'm banking on that Tua is playing, and if he does play, like I said, this the offense is going to have a spark, and while this Arizona Cardinals defense bent, it didn't break against. It did not break against not San Diego. It didn't break against the Chargers, who are now in Los Angeles. But yeah, especially if Tua plays, Tyreek Hill is going to have a big game. Jalen Waddle may even have a big game. Devon Achane is going to have probably a couple big explosive plays as well. So I'm taking the Dolphins, like I said. But for some reason, if Tua doesn't play, you can expect me to switch to Arizona. Up next, we have the New York Jets at New England. I'm going to
Sorry.
take. Oh, you're chilling.
I'm sorry. Okay, so Falcons, they looked kind of disappointing against Seattle, I'm not gonna lie. But the Bucks, they lost Godwin, they lost Evans. they're not going to be able to get the offense going. I'm taking the Atlanta Falcons. This Falcons offense should get back on track against the Bucks, whose defense has not been good this year, really. The Baltimore Ravens destroyed this defense. Um, and so for that reason, I think Bijan's gonna run all over this team. Um, yeah, we saw Derrick Henry do it. Bijan can definitely do it too. So for that reason, I'm taking the Falcons.
All right. So for Atlanta versus Tampa Bay, I am taking the Falcons as well. I mean, this I'm worried about this Bucks offense. They're very depleted right now. They're going to be depleted for a lot of, the next probably like 3 or 4 weeks. I don't even know. Maybe Kate Otten is a big game, but otherwise it's going to be, Sterling Shepard. It would not surprise me if either Kate Otten or Rashad White has the most receptions or the most receiving yards on the team as well. I think Baker still can ball out, but I mean, this defense hasn't looked good. We saw last time they played, this game was like 38-35 or something. I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to have 500 yards, but I definitely think, he's going to have a good game. The receivers are going to have a good game. Bijan's going to have a good game, and I'm going to take Atlanta. I think they're going to sweep this division matchup. The New York Jets at the Patriots.
Dude, I bet on the Jets way too many times this season, and it's only proven me wrong. But I'm gonna do it again this week against the New England Patriots, who lost to. They played the Dolphins last week. Was that who they played? Or was that the week before? Am I
The
tripping?
Patriots played the Jaguars in London.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, London game doesn't count. Anyways, they did not look good against the Jaguars. The Jaguars ran all over this team. Tank Bigsby did that, so I think Breece Hall will have no problem against the New England defense. He'll outmatch them. And now with Wilson and Adams at wide receiver, Christian Gonzalez can't dominate Garrett Wilson like he did last time. So that being said, this Jets offense will win the game. The Jets defense has a pretty good matchup here. I mean, the New England Patriots offense is nothing to be proud of, so it should be an easy game for the Jets, hopefully.
I'm taking the New York Jets as well. I think they're going to sweep this, division matchup. The Patriots have looked better with Drake May, but we saw what happened. Obviously, this isn't last year, but we saw what happened last year when the New York Jets played a rookie quarterback, and you could argue C.J. Stroud is better than Drake May, and they locked him up. He did not have a good game. So I'm expecting Drake May to not have a good game. He may throw for some yards, but I feel like he's going to have some turnovers in there as well. Like you said, this defense could not stop the run. The Jaguars had 171 yards on the ground. Trevor Lawrence only threw for 193 yards, but he only threw for 5 incomplete passes. So, yeah, there's just a lot going on. And now Christian Gonzalez has to either stay on a side or he's got to follow somebody. But then you're going to have a lot of people flip-flopping and everything. So I honestly don't even know how they're going to play that. And I think, there's just something about the Jets. I feel like they need to bounce back. They have to bounce back. And if they don't, and they lose to the 1-6 Patriots, yeah, it may just be chalked for the Jets this season. Okay, up next, we have Green Bay at Jacksonville.
Look, I hate when the Packers play Jacksonville. Jacksonville always feels like they have something against us, but this Packers team is special, man. They're gonna win this game easily. Um, yeah, our defense is gonna lock up Trevor Lawrence. It's not gonna be close. Jair Alexander held Stephon Diggs to 0 yards on 0 receptions last week, so he's gonna have no problem with Brian Thomas Jr. And then besides that, the Jags got Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk, who have been quiet all year. I'm not too really worried about their passing game. ETN, I'm not sure if he's back this week, but I believe Peterson wants to keep him as the RB1. So ETN and Bigsby, the run defense has still been kind of the weakness of this Packers squad, in my opinion. So, I mean, if ETN's the running back, I think we have no problem. Bigsby has the most yards per carry of any running back this year, so that might be a bit of an issue. But overall, I think the defense will be able to get things done, force a few turnovers. We lead the league in turnovers, so that's kind of what we do. But I think the story of this game will come down to the turnovers for Jordan Love. He had 2 interceptions last week. They were just bad throws. I'm not sure what was going on. But if he can clean that up, this game won't be close. This Jags secondary isn't great, so I'm hoping he has a bounce back game, even though he really didn't play all that bad last week. Um, and I think Josh Jacobs will run over this Jaguars defense as well. I think it's just going to be dominance, and it should be. If you're a Packers fan, this game should be dominance. It shouldn't be close. And I'm taking the Green Bay Packers.
I'm taking the Packers. If Jordan Love can clean up his turnovers, he's probably the best quarterback in the NFL. But, he's been throwing a lot of interceptions. I think he has 6, which is the most, or tied for the most in the league. And he's missed a couple games as well. So he needs to clean that up. Although this Jags secondary isn't that good. So he should be able to get some big plays, some big chunk plays as well. Yeah, this Jags defense isn't the best. ETN is on track to play as well. At least he's got points in fantasy. They're still saying he's going to be RB1. I'm curious to see how that split's going to go, especially with Tanks Bigsby playing this good. So we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, the Packers have a solid secondary. So, the Jaguars with their offensive struggles outside of pretty much Tank Bigsby, I'm not expecting them to, go out here and shock the world. The Packers against CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud only had 86 yards and only completed 10 passes. So, you could say CJ Stroud is probably a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, if not maybe top 8 or 5. So, yeah, this may be a rough game, even though it's in Jacksonville, for Jacksonville. So, yeah, this might be an ugly game quickly. So we're just gonna have to wait and see. Up next, we have Indianapolis at Houston.
I'm taking the Houston Texans. Stroud had one of the worst performances of his career against Green Bay. And I think it's a bounce back week for him against the Indianapolis Colts, who have not been that great, despite what their 4-3 record might say. Anthony Richardson did not look great. I mean, they snuck away with the win. That was not a great performance from the Colts overall. I think the Houston offense is going to dominate this Colts defense, and I think this game might be close just because of the divisional matchup here, but I think the Texans should sneak away with the win here.
I am taking the Texans. I think they're going to bounce back this game. The Colts. I mean, Anthony Richardson against the Dolphins only completed 10 passes, 10 of 24 for 129 yards. I mean, he led the team in rushing, but that was not that. He also lost a fumble. However, the Colts as well, they lit up 96 yards to Jonnu Smith. And they played 2 quarterbacks. They played the Dolphins. And they almost won that game. So I'm expecting, the Texans to just have a huge bounce back game. This could be close though, because it is an NFC or an AFC South, matchup. So that could be something like that. I'm not sure when Nico Collins comes back either. So, maybe I don't think he's back for another couple weeks, but Tank Dell needs to get going. He did not have a good game last week. I think the one potential ball that he was going to catch or could have caught, he dropped. Otherwise, I'm not even sure how many other targets he had. He had 4 targets for no reception. So Dankdale needs to get it going. Stephon Diggs, I mean, he just didn't have a lot of yards, but he had 5 catches. So I think they'll bounce back, though, against this Colts team who is very prone to having explosive plays on them. Up next, we have Philadelphia at Cincinnati.
This was the hardest game for me to pick here. Cincinnati's offense has been firing on all cylinders, but the Eagles have looked pretty good too. That being said, I'm gonna take the Cincinnati Bengals here. I think this Cincinnati offense is really good, and I think they'll be able to expose this Philly defense through the air, with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. This offense will be really good. Chase Brown and Zach Moss in the backfield, the 1-2 punch. Chase Brown has been pretty good on the year, so I expect him to have a decent run attack against the Eagles. The Eagles' biggest downfall for me is Jalen Hurts. Even in that blowout win against um the Giants, I know they didn't have to pass the ball that much, but I believe Hurts only had 11 completions, if I'm not mistaken, for a little over 100 yards. So that's just not sustainable, and it's gonna come down to Saquon Barkley. I think the Bengals will do just enough with the help of Nick Sirianni, forgetting that Barkley's actually on the team, to silence this Eagles offense and win this game.
I'm taking the Eagles, although I am worried about Jalen Hurts. Like you said, Jalen Hurts, he was 10 of 14 for 114 yards, 89 of those yards going to A.J. Brown. Also, half of those receptions going to A.J. Brown as well. I mean, this game was back and forth for me. I honestly didn't really know who to choose. This game is either going to be high scoring or it's going to be super low scoring for some weird reason. They need to use Saquon Barkley, though. They need to use him in the running game. He had 17 carries against the Giants. They honestly didn't really need to throw the ball against the Giants. They had almost 270 yards on the ground, which is insane. And they need to get Saquon Barkley, though, in the passing game as well. Jalen Hurts needs to target someone besides A.J. Brown as well. I'm not sure if Dallas Goedert is coming back this week. If he does, that's going to help out Philadelphia as well. They need to get Devonta Smith back into, a groove, or just even looking at him. Because Jalen Hurts, he's got some people wide open. I was watching a Kirk Benkirk video on it. He had, I think it was Devonta Smith on a drag wide open, and he tried to extend the play and ended up throwing the ball out of bounds, and Devonta Smith was still wide open. So Jalen Hurts can read more than one person going through a pass. I feel like this is a win, and it's going to also determine how much pressure can this Eagles defense get on Joe Burrow, and see how much they can do. They had, I think it was 5 sacks. I'm sorry, they had 8 sacks against the Giants. I don't expect them to have 8 sacks against Cincinnati, but if they can pressure Joe Burrow, I think that's going to help them win this game. Up next, we have New Orleans at the Los Angeles Chargers.
I mean, New Orleans is decimated. I'm taking the Los Angeles Chargers. Although they lost that game against the Cardinals, I think they'll be able to win against the Saints, who in my opinion are a worse team. The Chargers, they had over 300 yards through the air, which was not what we expected from the Chargers. So that sign that they have some sort of passing game is encouraging, and I think it'll open up more opportunities for Dobbins in this run game, and I think they'll be able to beat the Saints in this way. Um, the Chargers defense should have a pretty easy matchup against the Saints. I don't know who's the starting QB is going to be, if it's Derek Carr or if they're gonna stick with the rookie. But overall, I think the Chargers will be able to take care of business and move to 4-3.
I'm taking I'm taking the Los Angeles Chargers. I really feel like they should have won that game last night against Arizona, but they only kicked field goals. I mean, Herbert had pretty much almost 350 yards through the air. So, yeah. I mean, I think this game is a little more competitive if Derek Carr plays. I'm banking on him not playing, though. So, in that case, I feel like San Diego, they don't have the greatest defense, but they don't have the worst defense. So, it's probably going to be one of those things. The Saints offense struggles, and, the Chargers just play their style of football, and that's going to lead them to the win in this game. Up next, we have Buffalo at Seattle.
I'm taking the Buffalo Bills. I just think they're strictly a better team. And I believe DK's probably not gonna play this week. They're probably just gonna give him a week with that injury. So that is definitely a big loss for Seattle. Um, James Cook, bounce back week for him against the Seattle defense. Should be able to run all over them, which will open up the pass game from Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman, Shakir. I think this game might end up being a blowout for the Bills, and this should be a pretty dominant win, in my opinion, for the Bills.
Okay, so I'm taking Seattle here. This might be, actually, this is the minority, but like that Atlanta offense was supposed to be super explosive. They only scored 14 points that entire game. They had a defensive touchdown. They picked off Kirk Cousins twice in that game, and they did that all without their top two corners. And you could argue, maybe Amari Cooper's better than Drake London, but Darnell Mooney is definitely better than Khalil Shakir, and Bijan is probably better than James Cook. They did have 155 yards on the ground, but I think if Seattle can force Josh Allen into an interception or some other turnovers, fumbles, because he's very prone to fumbling. I don't think he's done it that much this season, though. I think this is a winnable game for Seattle. I mean, even without DK, I think this offense is still going to work. Kenneth Walker's been on fire this entire season. JSN's going to have to step up, but Lockett will be there. The tight ends have gotten more involved this season as well. And maybe they get Reek Woolen and Trey Brown back. If they do, that's just even more bonus for Seattle in that secondary who, played really good with two cornerbacks down essentially. So I'm taking Seattle. I think this is going to be a close game, though. It's probably going to be like a 3 to 5 point game. So should be a good one. Up next, we have Chicago at Washington.
I'm gonna take the Washington Commanders. Somehow the Bears are favored in this game, for the money line at least, which makes no sense to me. Um, Although the only downfall here is I'm not sure what the Jaden Daniels' status is gonna be for this game. Either way, though, I think this Commanders team has just looked like the better team in my opinion. Um, we did see kind of flashes of Caleb Williams toward the end before their bye last week, so maybe this offense gets it going. They probably will, but I think this Commanders team will be able to dominate through the ground. Brian Robinson is having a great year. I think he'll continue to keep doing that, and I think they'll beat the Chicago Bears at home.
I'm taking the Bears. They're coming off a bye week. That defense is very, very good. And Caleb Williams is starting to get into his groove as well. DeAndre Swift, surprisingly, has been playing really well over these past couple of weeks as well. And look, the Commanders, they're playing good. I'm kind of banking on this game as of right now, too. Jane Daniels isn't playing. So if he isn't, I think this is even more favorable for the Bears defense. Their defense has been really good. Maybe Marcus Mariota can be, insane, but I highly doubt Marcus Mariota is going to be insane. The Bears, fresh off a bye week, you know, they're rested up. They've been They've been studying this game. They've been practicing this, going over this game in practice for past, probably 2 weeks or whatever since they got back from London. And this is the game we all wanted: Caleb Williams versus Jaden Daniels. I don't know if we get it, but if we do, it's going to be a good game. But I'm taking the Bears just off of their defense. Up next, we have Carolina at Denver.
I'm going to take the Denver Broncos. This game shouldn't be close. Denver looked really good against the Saints, who blew out the Panthers. So mathematically, if you think about it, the Panthers don't stand a chance. And I don't know if Andy Dalton's playing with that car crash situation, but even if he is, I think this Panthers team will get dominated. The Broncos defense is way better than the Panthers offense, and the Panthers defense has been terrible all year. Should give Bo Nix a pretty good game here, and yeah, dominance for the Broncos here.
I'm taking the Broncos. Yeah, I don't see this game being too close. It's in Denver as well, so I mean you have the high altitude as well. It plays in the Broncos' favor, probably. But yeah, I mean the Broncos, their defense did most of that work against New Orleans. Granted it was a rookie quarterback, but the Panthers are probably the equivalent of that offense as well. Just on how their offense is being bad. So I think Denver's going to win this. Bo Nix doesn't need to be special. The running backs don't need to be special. They just need to play ball, not turn the ball over. If that defense gets turnovers, just capitalize them on any sort of points, and this should be a fairly easy win for Denver. Moving on, we have Kansas City at Las Vegas.
I'm taking the Kansas City Chiefs. They're big favorites in this game, but this is an AFC West matchup, so things might get a little wacky. If anyone beats the Chiefs, it's gonna be the Raiders, all right? Listen, it's gonna be some weird game where the Chiefs just don't show up, and it's gonna be the Raiders. But I don't think that's this week. I'm taking the Chiefs here. Chiefs defense has looked so solid through the first 6 games of the season, and this Raiders offense has looked so bad through the first 6 games of the season. So I'm taking the Chiefs for that reason. Should just outmatch them there. It's not gonna be close.
I'm taking the Chiefs. They're going 7-0 to start the season. You can put money on it. The Las Vegas Raiders will have 3 or more turnovers this game. Put something on it. I'm that confident in it. I think Minshew is playing at quarterback. He's turned the ball over quite a lot. And I mean, I don't even know if Jacoby Myers is playing. So, you can scratch him out of the equation if he doesn't play. So you're pretty much what you had last week, which was Brock Bowers, Trey Tucker, and they lost. That game was close. They only lost by 5 to the Rams, but I mean, it's just not looking good for Las Vegas, and the Chiefs have had their number. These pretty much since Mahomes has been playing them. I think they've only lost maybe a game or two to Mahomes, but if they do lose this game or lose a game to the NFC West or AFC West, it's going to be later on in the season when the Chiefs know they have like that first seed locked up or something. So I'm taking the Chiefs. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, we have the Cowboys at San Francisco.
This is an interesting matchup. Both teams have not looked like the teams we expected them to look like coming into the season. And I think I'm gonna take the Dallas Cowboys here strictly because I think they have an advantage coming off the bye. They've been kind of rested up. Um, I think Parsons is back, so that's probably a plus for their defense. And I think this team is just gonna be able to win this game on defense. And I think CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott can finally get it going here. They had the bye to talk things over, so they'll be able to get it rolling on offense, I think, through the air. San Fran, I mean, I don't know what to say about this team. They're so deprived on offense with injuries. I think this Dallas Cowboys defense has a pretty good matchup against this team, just strictly because of the injuries for the 49ers. So for that reason, I'm taking the Dallas Cowboys here.
I'm taking the Cowboys as well. Like you said, they're coming off the bye week. I think they're going to win off this bye week. As of right now, Micah Parsons, Eric Kendrick, and Kayleen Carson are all questionable, but they may play, they may not play. If they do play, especially Parsons and Kendrick, that's going to be a boost to that Cowboys defense. Now, San Francisco, they're without Ayuk. Deebo Samuel is questionable. He may or may not play. Juwan Jennings is questionable. He may or may not play. George Kittle is questionable. He may or may not play. I think one of them plays. But for some reason, if none of them play, you're going to have Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Cowing, who I think is a rookie as well, and Ronnie Bell as your wide receivers, and then Eric Saubert as your tight end. They'll probably use Juszczyk as a tight end, honestly, if Kittle can't play. But that's it. So unless Jordan Mason and the other running backs can put up, I don't even know. I have like 300 yards on the ground. I don't see San Francisco winning this game. Cowboys are coming off a bye week. They've been frustrated. The players, they had a week to rest up, regroup, try to figure out what's wrong, see if they can get it going. And I think they're going to do it against San Francisco, even though a lot of people, actually 80% of the people, are taking San Francisco in this game. I think Cowboys are going to come out and shock this team. And I think after this game, we're going to be questioning San Francisco. Probably a lot of people are going to be questioning Brock Purdy, but I think we're going to be questioning San Francisco as a whole. Do they even go for the wild card, or do they kind of just chalk this season up as a whole due to so many injuries on both sides of the football? Monday Night Football, we have the New York Giants at Pittsburgh.
Wow, what a banger of a game to have on Monday Night Football, am I right?
100%.
This game should be the Steelers game. I was stoked watching that Steelers offense last week against why am I blanking who they played? The Jets, sorry. I love that game. Russ looks so good. Giants, on the other hand, 3 points, stinker of a game. Although this game is not in MetLife, so maybe Daniel Jones flips the switch because he's not at MetLife, but probably not. I like the Steelers here. Um, their defense is pretty healthy as of right now. So I think they'll be able to match up pretty good against the Giants and should be an easy win for them.
I'm taking the Steelers. I know it's one game, but Russell Wilson looked very good in that game. You can argue that the Giants have a worse defense than the Jets. So, the Eagles ran for almost 270 yards, I think, against the Giants. Expect Najee Harris and Jalen Warren to have a big game on the ground. They're going to mix that up with these Russell Wilson moon balls to George Pickens. This is going to be a win for the Steelers. If it's a blowout, I don't think the Steelers put up even 37 points like they did last time. I think they put up like 30. But, it's probably going to be like a 30-3 game or like a 30-7 game. It's not going to be close. And, yeah, this is a tough defense. And the Eagles gave up or the Giants gave up 8 sacks to the Eagles. So with TJ Watt on this team, I mean, like, who knows? Pittsburgh may even get the record for the most sacks in a single game with how bad that Giants offensive line is. So honestly, we may witness some history, but it's not going to be a good one for the New York Giants. I'm taking Pittsburgh. Those are our predictions for Week 8. Who's your auto lock for this game? There's so many.
I think I have to go with the Packers just as a Packers fan. I want this game to be an auto lock, and I'm instilling my faith in this team by making them my auto lock this week. So Jordan Love is gonna go out, demolish the Jaguars. We're gonna have a great Sunday.
There's so many you can take. You can take Pittsburgh over the Giants, the Chiefs over the Raiders. You can even take the Broncos over the Panthers. But I'm taking the Lions over the Titans. I mean, this game, the Titans have a solid defense, but the offense of Tennessee, even if the Lions only score 20, 23 points, is not going to be able to keep up with them. So my auto lock is Detroit over Tennessee. All right, fantasy football. I won this week, although I didn't really have much competition. My opponent's team sucked, and he also didn't take out Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Kupp, or Hawkinson. But my team did solid, 104 points, 2 over projected. I'm sitting now tied for 6th in the league, so not the best, not the worst. We're middle of the pack.
Yeah, I was feeling really good about my team. We put up 165 points. And then my rock for the whole season, Chris Godwin, is out. I mean, gosh, that was such a blow to my team. And Metcalf is gonna miss this week too. So now my receivers are Devontae Smith, Wan'Dale Robinson, and I have Cortland Sutton in the flex. And I currently have 2 bench spots completely wide open just because I've dropped Jerome Ford and Chris Godwin just because Godwin's out for the season and Ford is just gonna have no role in this Cleveland offense anymore. So my team, I was feeling really good about it. I mean, I'm first in the league right now, but at the same time, my depth now is really bad without Godwin, and I probably need to make a trade.
I dropped Rashid Shaheed because he's out for the season with his knee surgery. Honestly, this week, I feel like I'm in such a tough position. Right? Right. I'm keeping Jordan Love. Like, I have so many tight ends that could pop off. This is ridiculous. DJ Moore is coming back, so I feel like I have to start him against Washington. He should do pretty solid. Darnell Mooney, I feel like I have to start him against Tampa Bay. Last time he played Tampa Bay, he had 31.5 points. So I feel like he's going to have a monster game again. But now I got to make a decision. What tight end do I start? I got Tucker Kraft coming off a touchdown. I mean, he would have only had like 3 points or 6 points if he didn't catch that touchdown. But he's been a touchdown machine recently. They're going up against Jacksonville as well. You got Cade Otton, who had 18 points last week. He's going up against Atlanta, but he potentially could be the number 1 focus point for Baker Mayfield that isn't a running back in the passing game with the injuries to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And then I have Cole Kmet, who outside of week 1 hasn't seen a game below 6.4 points and has 2 games where he is over 20 points. So, and they're playing Washington. So I honestly have I don't know who to put in at my tight end spot this week.
Hey, look, if I were you, I'd just put in Cade Otton because I feel like he has the highest upside out of these guys. Tucker Craft, he shares the ball with a lot of targets every week. And I think that's a big thing for Otton. Without those top two wide receivers, he's definitely going to be one of Mayfield's go-to guys in this offense now. So that's why I would start Otton. Komet's kind of the same situation as Kraft with all the targets on that Chicago offense. So I would personally start Otton if I were you. Going into some of the waivers I have for this week, um, look, I got two open roster spots. I'm just gonna go and try to claim Khalil Shakir and Keenan Allen if I can. I'm probably not gonna get them because I'm in first place, so I'm last in the waiver order. If I can snag one of those two guys, though, that's probably good. And then I'm probably gonna sign some guy tomorrow morning just to fill out my roster because I'm assuming I'm not gonna get both of those guys.
You are probably not getting Khalil Shakir because I have put in a waiver claim for him again, even though I dropped him earlier this season. I'm dropping Jacoby Myers. You know, is my I don't think the Detroit bye already happened. I'm pretty sure. So the only bye week for my wide receivers, if I get Khalil Shakir back, is Darnell Mooney. And then I can potentially just throw in a running back or a tight end in at flex when that happens. So my wide receivers are good essentially for the rest of the season unless they get injured. So it's kind of, I don't know. Like, I don't have faith in Jacoby Myers. So I don't know why I picked him up, but hope I may not even get him because I think I'm like seventh in this or this wave order this week. I'm fifth actually. So I don't even know if I get him. We'll have to see. This week, though, I haven't switched anyone out yet, but I think I'm projected to lose as of right now. Yeah, I mean, the team I'm facing is projected for 125 points, but Kittle is questionable. Zay Flowers is questionable as well. I hate to do this, but I think ETN is going to play, so I'll probably switch him out for Tyrone Tracy, and I don't like that matchup anyway against Pittsburgh. And then I'll probably keep Cade Otton in over Kraft and Komet, and who knows, maybe I can use one of them as a trade piece because, I mean, as of right now, Komet is third in tight end position ranking, and Kraft is fourth. So, you know, maybe I could use it to swindle out a better running back which I've been trying to do. Nobody's accepted my trades though. I tried, what was it, last week? I tried last week to get Brian Robinson Jr. I never got a response back. I was giving him ETN, Kraft, and Braylon Allen. Didn't even, just never looked at it, I guess. So, you know, we'll see. If I decide to trade it for a running back, I may wait a week to see how ETN does and then make my decision.
So for this week, with the lineup I have currently, I'm projected to win by point 0.3. But my opponent, I believe, has not made any roster changes, and he is currently starting Romeo Dobbs and Josh Downs, so that will probably change. Looking at his lineup, he has Tyreek Hill on the bench along with Tony Pollard, and he has T. Higgins in that flex, so he probably changes his lineup around. I'm probably the underdog this week. It's kind of expected. I mean, I'm without my top two wide receivers now, one for the season and one just for this week. But this week, it's not looking too great for me. I have to put Cortland Sutton in at flex as of right now if I don't get any pickups. He had 0 points last week, so I'm not too confident in that. But I'm hoping Jonathan Taylor comes back this week. He's listed as questionable, and he had his first participation in practice this week, so I'm hoping he plays against Houston. It's not that favorable of a matchup, but he's definitely an upgrade. And yeah, I mean, maybe I sneak one out this week, maybe I don't. We'll have to see.
It's going to be tough as well. I'm going to need a big game from like all my receivers. I mean, though, he does have Deontay Johnson and Chuba Hubbard in right now. So, if he doesn't switch anyone, they're playing the Broncos. So, like, if this game gets out of hand, they probably won't run the ball that much. That could help me. Same thing with the Rams against Minnesota if that game gets out of hand. So that could help. But yeah, I mean, even at his bench, he has Jalen Warren, which could be a problem if he puts him in, or Freiermuth if Kittle doesn't play. Although I don't know how helpful that would be. So I feel like I'm gonna need a monster game from somebody that isn't Jordan Love. A monster game from like Darnell Mooney or James Conner or something. Like I'm gonna need someone to get like probably 30 plus points if I want to win this week. So we'll have to see. If it does, though, that definitely helps me out because I have the least amount of points allowed in this league, which is crazy. I mean, this week helped so much, but we're not going to talk about that. And then, like I said, I'll just have to make my decision on. After this week, I'll probably make my decision on whether or not I want to officially trade ETN. Because I've been looking to trade him, but who knows? I mean, maybe I go ahead and trade him next week if he doesn't do good this week. And then he's going to like turn into prime Derrick Henry or something, have like 400 yards every game. Who knows? Moving on to our fun question. Do you have one? Because I have to think of one really quickly if you don't.
Yeah, let's go ahead and pass it on to you. You got it. Start us off
All
strong.
right. Okay. I forgot to think. Okay. All right. So if we. Wait, this is theoretical. If we restarted the season, but only the backup quarterbacks were the only ones, like no starters. It was the backup quarterbacks for every team. Who do you think would have the most passing yards?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think. Huh. Okay. Look, I think. Okay, Steelers. Who are we counting as the backup? Because I think either way, it's one of them. I think it has to be. I think they have the best quarterback room in the whole league. Just looking at every team.
I guess. Well, I guess Russell Wilson was supposed to start the season until he got injured. So I guess Fields would be the backup then.
Yeah, I mean, Fields is probably who I'd go with there. The only other option I'll let you have an answer. I want to see what you would say. But I'd probably say Fields, I guess.
I wasn't even thinking of Fields. I was thinking Sam Howell.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, he threw a lot of passing yards last year, but otherwise,
Sam Howell would not be top 5 on my list. I could think there's 5 better than him.
Who else would you have on that list?
I got Joe Flacco above
Joe
him.
Flacco. Okay.
I got the Bengals backup. What's his name? Is Browning? Jake Browning?
Is Jake Browning? I don't
Is
even
that the
know.
backup still?
Yeah, it is Jake Browning.
Okay, so I'd take him. I mean, he didn't do terrible in Burrow's absence. And I would also take what's his name?
Trey Lance. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, not Trey Lance. Gosh, I was just looking at it. Who was I? Oh, I would take Zach Wilson for the Denver
Zach
Broncos.
Wilson.
Yep, I think he would be higher than Sam Howell too.
You think he
You
would?
talk about, oh, Zach Wilson, same record as Rodgers, whatever.
That's true.
So
That's
you
true.
never know.
I mean, I would think it would. I mean, Phil is probably obvious answer. I think it would be Sam Howell then, though. I mean, you could. I would like to say Drew Lock. I don't think that's possible with that offense, though. But I mean, Sam Howell, like he wasn't. He threw a lot of interceptions, but he was not. atrociously bad when he played, you know, on the Commanders. He had almost 4,000 yards that last season or in 2023 with the Commanders. So it's definitely
Fair
possible.
enough.
He did throw the same amount of touchdowns as interceptions, though. That'd be another story for another day, but could be him. Fields does have over 1,000 though this season, and it would probably be Fields.
All right. My question for you. So if we look at the NFC North, if the season ended today, all four NFC North teams would make the playoffs, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you is the NFC North, I think without debate is probably the most stacked division in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question is, do you think at least three teams from the NFC North make the playoffs, if not four? I don't think four is possible, but at least three. Do you see it as feasible?
Okay, let me look at this right now. Who's in Commanders are in first? Okay. I mean, as of right now, okay. Detroit would have the 1 seed. Detroit wins over Minnesota based on head-to-head win percentage. As of right now, obviously that can change if they lose. And as of right now, Chicago has the tiebreaker over Philadelphia based on best win percentage in conference. So it's definitely possible. You have to worry about the Chicago Bears though. And looking at their schedule, they got a tough schedule coming up. They play, once they get past starting November 17th, they play Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit. Or at Detroit. Green Bay and Minnesota are at home. At San Francisco, which they may honestly win that game because San Francisco's been pretty beat up, so we'll have to see how that goes. Then they play at Minnesota. They play against Detroit and Seattle at home, and then their last game is against Green Bay. Philadelphia, on the other hand, their schedule is a mix. They play Jacksonville, Dallas, which they can potentially win both Dallas games or lose both Dallas games. Same thing with the Washington games. I think they could win both or lose both. They could beat the Rams. They probably won't beat Baltimore, Carolina, Pittsburgh. I think the Bears, they almost have similar schedules based on like how good the teams are right now and how strength. I think the two teams you have to worry about though, potentially San Francisco if they get healthy, Philadelphia, and maybe Tampa if a miracle happens. I think it's definitely possible, but it's going to depend on how the Bears end this season. I want to say, unless they have a big collapse, I'm pretty confident Minnesota and Green Bay will both make it.
Yeah, I feel like with all the divisional matchups still to happen, I mean, the Bears are yet to play a single game inside the division, so they still have six divisional matchups left through 7 weeks of the NFL season. Those games are historically not easy. I think the Bears are going to be the team missing out on the playoffs from the NFC North. And, you got the Eagles at 4-2. You got the Cowboys at 3-3. Bucks at 4-3. I don't think they'll be a big threat to these teams, but you know, I feel like there's not really that much competition for the wild card spots right now. I feel like there's only gonna be play or one team from the NFC South in the playoffs, more than likely.
Mm-hmm,
The
yeah.
way the NFC West is looking right now, there's probably only gonna be one team unless the 49ers figure it out or the Cardinals are like a sneaky dark horse. Because don't forget, the Cardinals have a super easy schedule throughout the season, and they're sitting at 3-4. So Cardinals, kind of a dark horse for this wild card spot. Kind of underrated. But anyways, I see the NFC South making out with only one team. Seattle Seahawks currently in first in the NFC West. Probably only one team out of the NFC West as well. The NFC East, maybe two teams I could see where either Philly or Dallas takes that seventh seed. So I think my prediction is three teams from the NFC North are going to make the playoffs. And it'll be interesting to see how that pans out because we might see divisional matchups within the playoffs, which would be crazy to think about.
That would be insane. Yeah, it's gonna be close. And, it may come down to tiebreaker as well. But the last 8, it's gonna all come down to Chicago. The last 8 weeks, they play 6 divisional matchups, I think it is, and the other 2 games they're not cakewalks. They play at San Francisco, which, even if they're not healthy, will be definitely, a little bit of a challenge. And then they play Seattle as well. They play Seattle at home, but I mean, Seattle is not, that offense is explosive, and while they do give up a lot of yards on the ground and they do give up a lot of yards on defense sometimes, that defense, the yards don't equivalate to how good that defense on paper actually is. So, I mean, they can lock up a team as long as they contain the run game. They will definitely give Caleb Williams problems in the passing game. So, it's all going to come down to the Bears. And it'll be the first, if they get all 4 in, it'll be the first, I guess, division in the history, the history ends since they've done this new playoff standings for them to go ahead and, win. I don't think this physically happened over on the AFC, but the AFC, the 6th and the 7th seed are probably wide open unless Miami and the Jets have a massive, massive comeback. That is going to be the end of Midweek Meetings, episode number 8. A lot of talk about this week. A big episode once again. Maybe next week we'll have some trades. I mean, this was just a headline week with a bunch of injuries and everything. So hopefully it's not like that next week. Hopefully we get some of these trade rumors as well out of the way. Get some people traded. That'll really decide, what teams are looking to make a push even for the playoffs or a Super Bowl run, or what teams are, kind of chalking up the season, maybe looking for a better draft pick or get some draft picks out of trading players. Excited to see what week 8 has in store for us. If you're over on YouTube, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss when we do upload the Midweek Meetings episode. If you're over on Twitch, make sure you guys follow us both. We are live every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. EST, twitch.tv/KnockdownNico or twitch.tv/Pr3ssix, live with the episodes every week. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys once week 8 ends.